Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a raspberry pretzel salad. The recipe itself calls for strawberries, but I like tart, and so I went with raspberries instead. That's also kind of how my mom did it when I was a kid. She made this a number of times when I was a wee little lad, and I've made it a few times since growing up, before and after the glutening, so I'm kind of familiar with this. I will save some of my comments to the end about flavor, because the gluten-free component of you're just swapping out gluten-free pretzels for the normal called for pretzels. I'm also a little bit bitter because they only had the straight stick pretzels versus like pretzels. But this recipe, super easy, like barely any hands-on time. It does take some time just because you're dealing with some layers need to be baked and then everything needs to be like cooled off to then add in like other layers, and then the layers need to be also cooled off and then put on and then set. So it adds up, but like none of it is hands-on time. It's more of like you just have it sitting on the counter or in the fridge, and then you can be off doing whatever. Like it's not even an active like I need to be in the room because something might burn my house down while it's simmering kind of a step. Like it is complete hands off, out of sight, out of mind. But also, this recipe is amazing because it's very striking. I'm hoping that you can kind of see this cross section clearly on the camera, but the layers just make it pop. And so if you bring this to a function, people are going to be like, the heck is that? And you can tell them raspberry pretzel salad, or you can be a little fancy with it and be like a pretzel crusted, no bake cheesecake with a jello topping. Because that's literally like that's what it is, but it just sounds way more complicated than what we're about to do. And I also did the fancy version. So I used actual heavy cream to make whipped cream instead of using Cool Whip. So you can even do what you're about to see could be even easier by just using Cool Whip. All right, enough rambling. I'll do a little bit more of that at the end when we do the taste test. But before that, I need to run through the ingredients and then we can get into cooking. Pretzels, raspberry jello, sugar, raspberries, cream cheese, butter, heavy whipping cream, and powdered sugar. The first step is going to be to mix together the jello and the boiling water. Mix that until it's fully dissolved and then set aside until it cools down to room temperature. The next step, let out some aggression. We're gonna crush the pretzels. I just use a rolling pin, but however you see fit. Now we're going to mix some sugar into melted butter, mix that together, and then we're going to pour that over the crushed pretzels, making sure that it's evenly coated. Now put the pretzels into the pan. I've halved the recipe, so I'm only using 8x8, and I actually had too many pretzels, so I just threw them into a small little pan that I'll make a tiny little bit from. Now pop those in the oven at 350 for 10 minutes. Now, because I'm not using Cool Whip, I'm going to make the whipped cream myself, and that's just heavy cream with powdered sugar, electric hand mixer until we get stiff peaks. Now we're going to whip the cream cheese with the sugar using a electric hand mixer on medium-high until it is fluffy. Now we're going to fold the whipped cream into the cream cheese until it's fully incorporated. Now we're going to spread that cream cheese layer onto the cooled pretzel layer that we made earlier, and then after it's evenly coated, pop that back in the fridge for 45 minutes. Finally, we're going to pour the jello and some fresh fruit onto the layers that we have prepared, and then pop that back in the fridge until the jello is set. Here we have a slice. Let's give it a taste test. So this is a delicious recipe. Like I said, the combination of the salty, the sweet, the tart, fantastic. The one little drawback is when you make it gluten-free, you're using gluten-free pretzels, which on a good day start out tasting a little bit stale. Then when you add them into a fairly moisture-rich environment, they also get a little bit soggy. Typically, in the original recipe, which is, I was cursed to have had this with gluten-containing pretzels as a kid, so I know what it should be. You have a bit of like a gummy layer from like the Jello, like a bit of a chew there, a very creamy middle layer, and that bottom layer is supposed to be very crunchy, like a nice snap to it when you bite through. So this contrast of flavors, contrast of textures, a delicious symphony of experience in your mouth. But with the gluten-free pretzels, that crunch, that snap is a bit meh. Like it's not really there. It's kind of deflated. I'm not 100% sure on how to fix it. I'm probably going to use this take over a different one, and I rambled for a very long time, but I'd mentally work through an idea that I had. So we'll quickly run through the runners up, and then I'll present my genius idea. You can use a different brand of pretzel than the one I use, and maybe that just works better. Maybe they have like a better crunch to it. Maybe just try like pulverizing them so they're a little bit more of like a graham cracker crust, so there's maybe less penetration of the moisture and stuff like that. Just a straight up graham cracker crust might be good. You lose the saltiness with that, but maybe you could add some salt or something like that. But the genius idea that I had was kind of a combination of no uh, pretzel layer, and you just do the cream cheese layer, which is my personal favorite, with Jello on top, and you just eat that as a dessert. It would be very tasty, but you lose the saltiness. And then you combine that with baking the bottom separately, and you keep that separate so that it doesn't get soggy. And then I had the idea of just, you bake it kind of bespoke, so like the amount that you want to eat, you make that, and you just put the top layer almost like ice cream, like kind of scoop it on top and serve it there. So then it could maybe be warm still, and then you add a contrast of temperature. So you have the cold top layer with the warm bottom layer. So it's almost like apple pie and ice cream. So that's what I want to try next, would be make a small amount in the oven, because it's, I think, 10 minutes that it's going in there for. So it's pretty quick, pretty easy. Just throw that in there, let it bake, pull it out, scoop it onto your plate, and then put the other layer on top of that and gobble it up. I think that's a winner. So that's the next time I make this, I'm gonna give that a go. It probably won't happen before I edit this, but I think that's gonna be good. So all that being said, give this recipe a go. If you can have gluten, if you can't have gluten, it's easy to make either way. You just buy a different bag of pretzels. Give it a go. Let me know what you think. Let me know what flavor you use for your top, because you can use whatever flavor you want there. That is entirely up to you. You can even put like blueberries in there, make it look like a flag for the 4th of July, all that kind of good stuff. The world is your oyster. Go out and see what happens. So on that note, bye mom, still not dead. See you.